So most of the sort of traditional views of decision making or of how life unfolds is very focused on the individual. And there's a lot of, there's this sort of story that's told that we have these alternatives that we select and we choose these alternatives. Um, and, it's purposely chosen because of, various different reasons. But we know what those particular things are and we purposely choose them. And that has a direct outcome if we choose wisely, if we are smart. Um, we choose the right alternative, and then that right alternative pays out more dividends because of that particular choice. I, as I've gotten older, I've become such, it's such a conundrum, because the research is all about that, but I believe so little in that sort of view as I've gotten older, and I know that that is difficult for me to say publicly, but Um, I just don't believe it anymore. I think about my own life circumstances. I was just thinking of, I'm a professor and I have a good wage. I'm living in a country that's stable. Um, you know, all of these are relatively stable depending on who you talk to. But, all of these things, I'm living in a time that is, better than it's ever been, regardless of what people are sort of suggesting, other than a few blips here and there that happen. Um, you know, all of those things, right? The choices that I made, and I think about, okay, given there's the moment where I was looking for a job, and I was offered this job. And if I didn't take that, I would have likely, I had sort of my determination that within. So I was going to wait until December. I was already, this was 6 years out. I was going to wait until December to give up. And I got the phone call I think it was in October or November, I believe. Um, and, I was very excited about that, but it could have easily have been if there was just another applicant that was better than me. And that's easy. If there was just another applicant that was better than me, that person would have been chosen, and I would have never gotten that phone call, and I would have been, an engineer, and that would have been perfectly fine. Or I was thinking about getting into, graduate school. I applied. I was far too young for the program. What they were looking for, they were looking for people that I was by far like 5 years too young, and it was just happening that they were expanding. The Ivy Business School was expanding their PhD program, and I got in, and I was part of that cohort, of a little bit of a larger cohort. Um, and I would probably have waited another year. I might have would have given up. I had another offer, is at Queens, and I probably would have took that, and I would have become. It was in the economics department. I would have become an economist, and would have been perfectly happy being there as well. I would have been totally fine being in that particular position, but I would have been in a completely different field. Um, you know, I think about the chance of me getting into my engineering program when I started my undergrad was not very good, right? Like I came from a place that would not have been recognized by the program, but for some reason they probably had some sort of, maybe it was a quota that they had across the province of getting I was from Ontario. I was from Northern Ontario, and they were looking, maybe they were trying to get across the province some diversity. I don't know. Um, but all of these things, and if I didn't go away, I would have been perfectly happy living in my town. I probably would have lived a much different life. Maybe I would have eventually. It was a pulp and paper mill. I would have eventually got a job at the mill, and I would have been totally fine. Um, my my understanding, and what I'm getting at is that there's all these kind of moments that you think you're making a choice, but it's really not. There's such little choices that are involved that are outside of your control. Like you do something, um, and yeah, the world responds in a certain way, but you would have gotten another outcome, and that would have been totally fine. And then there's the whole fact that I'm born today instead of 200 years ago. If I was born 200 years ago, my lifespan would have been half what it is today. It would have been close to death. Um, and I likely would have been in some war, in some gruesome war, and I probably would have had a gruesome death. Um, and, that's the simple fact. If you look at it and you think about it, the world has been around for a long time, no matter what perspective you talk to, right? Whether it's the religious perspective or, evolutionary biologist. Um, the world is, from both of those perspectives, the world has been around a long freaking time. And 200 years is just a blip of that. And so here I am, you know, if you take the perspective that there is a being up there, God sneezed by chance, and I had, I got out a little later than somebody that was born 200 years before me, and I wouldn't even been born on this continent if I was born, um, or if my grandparents stayed an extra 2 more years in Poland, they probably would not have been around today. They escaped in 1935 from Poland and moved to northern Canada. Um, I think about all these kind of things, and we think that our life is full of choices. It's really not. We don't have a lot of choice in what we do. We have, I don't know how to reconcile this, because even my choice that I make, that choice that I make was probably put in my head from somebody, either it was an educator or my parents that sort of gave me direction, all of these kind of things that when you add it up, your ultimate, free will or choice or agency, right, which is a discussion that's been had for many years. It's not a new thing. It's it's very little. And I believe that perspective a lot more. And what does that say about me, right? Like if I believe that a lot more, what does that say? What can I do? Um, I think I need to be more accepting. I think I need to be happier with where I am. I think I need to just sample things, right? Like send shit out. just just try. Send shit out and not worry about it. And you know, the world is not going to give you that feedback. I've been told no so many times. Screw it. just just go and try. The world's not going to, like there is no, and it is so much randomness to it. There's no like choice. I am not going to be like, well, I'm just going to choose to go there and that's what happens. No, that's not what happens, right? Um, the fact that I'm doing this whole reciprocity project right now is born out of me being frustrated, because perhaps, I went to the wrong school, I had the wrong, sort of setup. Maybe that was the case, or maybe I am just, a big buffoon and can't do anything, and all of, just all of that kind of stuff. There's just so much luck, chance, things that happen. Um, I just don't believe in this idea of this, you choose to do something, or being, strategic in the sense that it's taught. And I'm becoming a bigger advocate of that. I don't have a friggin' clue what that is. And it's interesting when I teach students this, and they kind of, they don't get it until they actually get it, when I, when you get them to actually do something, then they realize, man, I don't have a clue. Right? It all seems so easy on paper, but when you do it and there's something that's messing up, well, what do you do? Right? Like, do you do you give up? Do you um, is it that there's just so many things that go wrong or right for certain people and certain groups? Well, what do you do? Right? Like in those circumstances, there's nothing that you can do under those circumstances other than just being okay with your situation, practicing the fact that you're okay, thinking about you're okay, no matter what you're in, what situation you're in. You know, I think all of those things are like super important, and reminding yourself that you're freaking awesome no matter what. Um, and that's a hard thing for me to remember, very hard. And I just hopefully you remember that too. Like the fact that where you are and who you are is so outside of your control that you need to remind yourself that you're freaking awesome. And that's okay. It's okay with whatever happens to you. You're going to be fine. And then you live your life. And that's it. All right. Take care and have a wonderful day.